But I'm up here with some amazing creators here. You want to go down the line and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Matthew Sen. I'm a local 2D animator and comic artist. I'm from Kelowna, originally from Salmon Arm before then. So, all around the BC interior. And I've done a few shows and cartoons and comics. My most recent being a web comic called Poppy, the Girl Who Slept in 100 Years, which is currently available to read on Webtoon and is really fun, and you should check it out.
Hi, my name is Nate Bennett. I am a newly independent comic book creator, and I've collaborated on horror anthology stories, and I'm currently working on a action crime noir series called Ill Will. I'm from Grand Forks, originally from Vernon, and yeah, it's so far I've been fitting in well within the independent community.
My name is Jason Collins. I'm a comic book writer, tabletop role-playing game designer, actual play game master, and once upon a time did a little fiction writing as well for Wizards of the Coast. And I'm from Vernon, BC, and yeah, we are a bunch of local Okanagan comic creators. We are really appreciative to be here.
Love it. We all fit in well here. Is there any aspiring comic book writers in right there? So you're gonna have some questions. You're gonna line them up. Awesome. Do you guys have a bit of an agenda that you wanted to hit today? Anything in particular? You're just here to share your experiences. So first of all, how long have you been doing it? We talked a bit with Tom before this about young 12-year-old getting into the industry in particular, and maybe the encouragement that you're getting from family members and that type of thing. But how did you know that pivotal moment when you're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be an accountant? Go down the line.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because like I've been drawing pretty much my whole life since I could hold a crayon, that classic story, and making my own comics out of like, notebook papers and drawing in class and all that good stuff. And yeah, I originally thought like, oh, you can't do that for a career. That's too difficult or lame, or I'll go into, the community college and I'll go do all the science and math courses, which I actually was pretty decent at, but the local college didn't quite have all the courses I needed, and I was like, do I really want to? So I did take a year when I was about 19 or so, or 20, and was like, yeah, what do I want to do? And then I found out about in Kelowna, there's the Center for Arts and Technology, which is a trade school technically that does things for like 2D animation, 3D animation, graphic design, audio, computer stuff, all the technological fun stuff. So I was like, I knew a buddy who was applying there, and I was like, yeah, I could give that a shot. And yeah, sure enough, I started doing animation in there. And then, a little bit before then, I was, making my own comics and trying to go the homemade route, and those two worlds kind of pushed me into what I'm doing now. So it was, yeah, a little after high school, college, that I was like, okay, I can actually make this work.
Quick side on that. I have Poppy. I got it last year when we were chatting. I'm gonna get some feedback real quick here. But you have a very unique style of drawing, and I really, really personally like it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, most definitely. Next. Yeah.
I have developed a love for superheroes like Marvel and DC, and I've been drawing since I was like 8 years old. And after high school, I started drawing my own characters, and I went to Camosun College for the comic arts and graphic novels program, and I met a comic creator named Matt Smith, and he and I both collaborated on horror stories. And right, and after that, I went on to practice my character designing for like animation in Okanagan College, and after that, I started creating my own character for my crime series called Ill or Ill Will. And mostly I've been like getting inspirations from like darker characters like Batman, the Punisher, and of course John Wick, of course. And
Good choice.
yeah, and so far I've been branching out my creative ideas and inspirations ever since.
Seems like 8 years old is the age range And we talked a lot about like kids getting inspired, most definitely. You feel that as well?
Not all of us can be the double, triple threat writer, artist, letterer, designer, all that. As more as a pure writer, I dabbled with art in high school. As a couple of my friends are artists, as well as anybody who's into fantasy and science fiction and comic books does. But I never had the passion for it. I didn't have the desire to stick with the art, so writing was what I would do. Yeah, by the time I was 14 years old, playing role playing games, reading comic books all the time, and then deciding that, oh, I want to see if I can write like a Spider-Man script. And you start to do that because you see the stories on the page and you see the stories you like, and then sometimes you see the stories you don't like. You're like, why did they do that story? This would be a much better story, and you start to write it yourself just to do it. So that kind of led down the path. And really, for me, it's always been about storytelling and imagination, and that's where it all comes from. Reading comic books, playing role-playing games, just being immersed in that as a child of the '80s, pre-internet, pre-smartphones. It's all about your imagination, and that's where all of my inspiration and all of my just desire to not just consume stories, not just to experience them, but then to want to tell my own at the same time as well.
I love double down on the writing, 100%. Yes. Do you find having an element of drawing is important for conveying storyboarding or to your artists? Or do you find methods in order to convey that?
If you have an artistic base, even if it's stickmen drawing, there's a recommendation and an encouragement as writers to do as much as you can to show a page layout, show your artist, if you're not going to draw your own work, what it is you're looking for and what it is you want the page to convey. It really helps ensure that you have a better outcome. It's one thing if you've got an artist or a creative team that you're collaborating with, that you have rapport, that you've worked with maybe on a couple of stories already, you have a bit of shorthand with each other, you understand what the other person brings to the table. But comics is collaboration, comics is freelance. You could be working with different people each time. So having the ability to not just provide a script, but provide a bit of a visual breakdown just to show the artist, this is what I'm thinking, but also to be open and respectful of the artist's talent. Say, I want you to then interpret this and bring your own style.
I like that a lot. You have a question? Let's open up the questions right away. We got a bit of backstory on these cool guys doing awesome stuff. But I want to know when you're writing your stuff, what are your challenges that you're coming through? And maybe these guys can give you a bit of heads up. What do you got? Yeah. Go. That's great.
So you already answered my question with the artwork to the writing. I don't. My artwork isn't good enough to be the final thing, but I can definitely do storyboarding. So that was my question would be, what was the first stage you guys did when you first started your first project? Did you draw some stuff out and then pencil it in? Did you just rough line the story, find an artist?
Well, I mean, that question depends on what I consider my first project. Like I said, I've been doing it since I was in grade school. So that I just sort of made it up as I went along. You know, oh yeah, I think it's pretty easy to say my first graphic novel, which was called Quiet, a graphic novel of introversion, which was based on my own experiences with social anxiety and shyness and making friends and all that good stuff. I definitely had more like, I mean, I am an artist first and foremost. Jason's got the writing like locked in his brain. I just made up a bunch of characters and then thought of afterwards about how they might interact with each other and started developing a storyline through that. So that was my process, was just making up characters and then seeing how they would work, almost like toys in a toy box. You just have a bunch of characters and you just give them life and see what they do. And that can work pretty well for just seeing what kind of crazy interactions. But when I started to really get into like, okay, I want to make a story, and it started as a web comic online, and I did 6 issues worth, and I was like, okay, I'm going to need a script. And for me, still to this day, I start with just dialogue because for me, it's all the characters. So I'll just have like a list of dialogue, and at some points I'll break it up into panels and break it up into pages, however I feel like it should work, you know? So that's my way of doing it. And I don't know if that's the best way, but it's worked so far. So
Was it more of a challenge because you based it on yourself and some reality?
I'd say the opposite because I was just speaking from the heart and like basing it like so much on just what I knew. So it was probably one of the easiest, in terms of just, finding inspiration and reference because I was just based off myself. It was difficult topic, of course, but that I think that's also what a lot of writers start with is they start with what they know, or they'll base it off of an experience they had or people they know, and it really is true because that's the easiest way. You just are observing what's the world around you and then kind of just reflecting that in your writing and in your comics. And I think that's the best way to start. And even as you're getting along, writing more and more stories, like even my current one, Poppy, which is about a girl from the 1920s who wakes up in modern day. I'm just looking at the modern day around me and seeing like, what would someone from 100 years ago think about that? So it's a little more involved, but it's still just, what is the world around you? And that's one of the best ways to get it started.
Writing what you know is definitely something that resonates with almost everybody, as a matter of fact. Do you feel the same, Call? Oh, yeah. Either of you. Yeah.
Bas- Basically, drawing characters firsthand before drawing the story seems like fun at first, and yeah, it's a cool thing to do. But writing a story and getting it to make sense, that's the difficult part. Basically, what I start off with is something a bit more simple. Like if you come up with like a character with a symbol like a Green Lantern, you gotta like introduce its meaning first before proceeding with that story. But yeah, basically what I did was I came up with a nickname and a fancy protagonist name, and basically what people tend to go for nowadays is well written storytelling, like either stuff like Alan Moore or Mark Miller's work. It and basically nowadays people tend to look for more complex writing within their characters, and we want to write the characters to be complex. And as for the villains, well, the villains are kind of more on the realistic side of things. So basically, what I did was, in order to make good dialogue, I basically watched like movies where where the villain does their classic monologuing, or they got YouTube videos of villain quotes from every single movie that they've watched, and trying to get the realistic side of things. But yeah, for something like Ill Will, being the fact that it's like an action crime genre, what is the crime genre? What does it involve? Criminals, cops. So I started watching The Shield, and you tend to get those inspiration bits from those things. Inspiration is everywhere. You just got to know where to look.
That's awesome. Are you finding those? Are you double downing on a very specific genre? Is it what you know, or is it superhero? And then diving deep into that world. And when I was talking to Tom, he said he worked in a library for years. So like having access to all that information right away gives you so much inspiration. So I assume it's kind of the same deal, just surrounding yourself by those people or that genre at a younger age gets you into it. Yeah.
Basically it's that having access to things that you fall in love with at first, and the more you dive into it, the more likely you get a good sense of it. And yes, it's easy to get lost in there. That's another thing to keep in mind too. And sometimes it's best to come up for every now and then. But yeah, if you love it so much, I'd say go for it.
Does that answer sort of what you're looking for? Is there more you want? Yeah, it's in terms of part of it is also if you can now, it's easier than ever been to find a community, find a group. If you can find a local group, I mean that's fantastic because there's nothing better than collaborating in person, and we'll get together. We share scripts, we share artwork, and it just helps us make our work better. But you can do that online as well. And in the early days of the internet, I was focusing more on fiction writing as my personal work, but I would hang out on comic book forums, but not just for the purpose of enjoying comic books and sharing them. I found where the comic book writers and the comic book artists would hang out. And it was very small, little isolated groups back in the day, but that was invaluable because then you were hanging out with people that were talking the craft and sharing their work, providing real world examples of here's how I structure my script. Here's how I break down my page. And so nowadays you can find that everywhere. There's perhaps too much. It can be difficult to sort through the noise. But if you don't have anybody local to you, whether it's friends or family or anybody that you can share your work with in person. Look for that online community, and it doesn't mean you have to dive in all the way. You don't have to share everything you do, but just soak it in a bit, absorb what you're seeing. And I did that for years, just trying to get better at what I was doing and pick the best practices from all the other creators and sort of communities that I could find.
I'm personally a big fan of acknowledging the fact that you're going to be horrible until you're good. So in the very, very beginning, give yourself permission to be literally terrible at it. Is that kind of resonating? Like, are you in the terrible phase or are you in the okay phase right now?
Yeah. Here, go for it. So I'm lucky that I have a friend who's a professional writer who's helping me write the comic. The hard part that I'm finding is that I can storyboard it. I'm trying to find an artist that will bring it to life, and I don't know where to really start looking on that.
So the easiest answer is if you have social media, use social media to start with. Social media can be a difficult realm to navigate, but if you just go in with a specific request, you can either do a call out and say, I'm looking for comic book artists who actually do comic book art, not just pinup work or cover work, but actually do the big web page work. Twitter has got a huge comic book community on it. Blue Sky is a new social media arm, but they a lot of the creators have also joined up on there as well. And Facebook, I know that Matt and stuff has been on Facebook and has found a few people on there. So that's one way to do it, because you can just go in and just do a search comic book art, comic book artist. Twitter is an example. There are constantly people that are putting out calls saying, I'm looking for an artist. And if you come across those threads or follow a few comic book writers, you'll then see a bunch of responses and everybody posting their portfolios. And now you start following all those artists, and then you see who they're following. That type of thing it only takes you a short amount of time to sort of build your little network. You're not even engaging with these people yet. You don't have to interact with them, but you know where to find them, and you know where to find the people that they know where to find. And then you will start to find people like that style in my head matches what I had for my comic. Reach out to that person. You find they could be a full pro charging a full page rate, and maybe it's outside your budget, but they might also, I've had people that I've reached out to, and they either weren't available or their page rate was too high for me, but then they recommended someone else to me that they thought would match what I was looking for. The comics community is spread out far and wide, so we're isolated, but it's also really small. And if you can get into some of the social media groups, you start to connect with them all really, really quickly. I think that would be one of your first steps.
How do you guys feel like Fiverr was certainly an option when it get out finding artists? But how do you feel about first of all, you can connect with people here. There's certainly lots of artists here where you can, connect with them and get commissions done. Or however, if you love their art style, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but just loving somebody's art style may not apply to comic book style frames and conveying perspectives and telling the story linearly, if that makes sense, right? So tell me a bit about the balance on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like any medium, there's a language to it. It's quite similar to filmmaking. If you have a really good camera operator or director or whatever, they know what it should look like. It's the same with comics, where you have not just what the characters and drawings look like, but how they're staged, what sizes the panels are, the layouts of each page, how much is shown on each page. If you have to turn the page, then there's a reveal, and if you can use that to your advantage, right? And all this different stuff. And that's what like comic artists specialize in, is learning all that. And I mean, you can probably get maybe a couple artists together, one that's really good, like storyboard and layout person, and one that actually does the final art. But it's usually better to have to find one person who can do both, because there's definitely like comics people who have like learned that and trained in that for years, and to the writing aspect of it, you could also learn aspects of that too, because that's the kind of thing that would go in a script for like, because I've seen scripts for like animation and movies and comics, and they all have different formats, but they all say the same things of, here's what we're trying to convey, here's the characters, events, okay, dialogue, yeah, but also like, what are we showing, where is it, how close are we going to show it? And if you have like, even again, just stickman basic, like thumbnail it out, rough sketches, and get an idea of that. And if you can like learn those skills in pair with your writing skills, that'll take you really, really far in finding an artist to follow your steps and follow not just your writing, but also your guidance and your direction to make the comic you want to make.
I think about the writing side. I talk about my wife far too often because she's a writer for comic books as well. And I see a lot of the outlines that she creates for her artists where she does have to put in, well, she does put in the dialogue. She puts in panel 1, what happens, panel 2, what happens here. But she's very excited about the idea of when you hand it off to an artist, they might say, no, the story should be told. It flows so much better having it this way. She's got a basic idea of what she wants done to it, but maybe you can speak a little bit on behalf of that.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. That's part of the collaboration process is you each have ideas and you refine it on each other. And, you've got some sort of vision you want to share. And they're like, well, here's how we can do it better. Or this is working. This isn't working. We should cut this. We should move this here. And that's the kind of thing I do with these guys. Every week we're meeting up and it's like, is this working? I'll tell them what I'm trying to do, or they'll tell me what they're looking for. And I'll be like, well, if you're trying to do this, that might work better and such and such. But yeah, it definitely, if you work well with your artist, you can give them, you can start to build up a relationship with them, and you can give them less and less, exact notes and details. And if it's someone like me who does both the writing and the art and I do everything, you'll look at my script and like some panels, I won't even have a description. I'll just have the dialogue because I already know what it should look like because I know what it is. And if you can reach that sort of process together, then that's, something to strive towards and really hone and refine your craft. So it's a lot of work, but it's something to work towards.
Yeah, I definitely like where you're going with this there. Like discussing ideas, sharing it, trying to figure out how to make it work, especially if the ideas become compatible for it too. Yeah, basically it's important to like come up with like thumbnails, and it's also important to write down notes on how to make the dialogue better, whether it's like a one-liner or like something that the character says before the curtains close on the story. So basically, you can get ideas for like writing tips on how to do one-liners. Like right now, there's like a YouTube video of like 100 best one-liners before and after the kill, of course, and there's also one-liners in other movies too that great compliments.
Yeah.
But yeah, depending on how you want to tell the story, like you gotta know what genre you're trying to make the writing fit in with.
So the relationship between the artist and the writer is it could be one of two ways. Either you built it entirely and you love working with that artist, you found a perfect team, or I'm thinking the other side of it where, especially if you're just starting out, I think about situations, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, where when you find an artist and it just in the end doesn't do what you want to do, it's super okay just to work with another artist and do the same thing. And like, what is the typical etiquette on that?
Yeah, it's professionalism is both a really important word and one that not everybody knows the definition of, because you're all, like you said, freelance independents, and you're navigating your way through the industry at a very starter level, trying to figure this all out. And we're all passionate, and we all believe that we're here to do our best work. But the ability to communicate effectively to both what you want and what you don't want is invaluable. To go back just to a second for what you talked about with what your wife does, and she'll put the comments in, and then the artist will come back and do that. I have the same relationship with my artist on my fantasy comic Thistle that we're working on to put out next year. I'll lay out the script and I'll lay out the panels on a page. He will come back and he will have changed things. He'll have combined two panels into one panel. It's like, I was able to make this and make it do better. Now he and I have that shorthand, and I have full confidence in him and trust. And at the same time, he knows that if it's something that I don't want, I will push back and say, no, let's do it this way instead. But his art makes my ideas better because he will think as an artist does and be able to change that on the way. But yes, when you're freelance starting out and you're trying to find collaborators to work with, you have to be sort of really, really specific as to what you're looking for. ask for some test pages, negotiate that. Say, if you've got a page rate, or do you have a separate page rate that's not full art, but just for a test page, I want to hire you to test page. I'm going to give you 2 pages of my script, not because you are worried about whether they like the genre or like the story. Can they actually translate what you've written on the page to the art itself? And to give you an example, does it look like the characters how you imagine them in your mind? Can they do what Matt talked about, which is stage it and show people at different perspectives and show movement and action? And does it make sense? Or is it all just a bunch of static talking heads and it's not what you're looking for this particular story that you want to tell? And then you simply thank them and you'll say, I'm continuing to look for artists to collaborate. Thanks for your time. You don't have to continue the dialogue with them. You can let them go their way. You're going to go your way. And like I said, that's where on social media, you can find some of these call out threads or people looking, and you can get 5, 10, 20 portfolios where you can go through, and one by one, you can go through them and just see, here's my short list. Here's the people that their art looks pretty decent. Here's somebody who can actually format a comic page that looks like it would be something to be published. Does their style match my style in my head? And are they available? Can I afford them? And then you start the negotiation.
And it just because it doesn't work now doesn't mean it won't work later, I guess. When you write another story, you've been professional with somebody enough that you can call them up. Hey, it didn't work before. Call them, apparently. Call them. And you've got another story lined up with them. You're building relationships more than anything, yes?
100%. And that goes back to what I said earlier, Paul. We're spread across far and wide, around the world, but the comics community, freelance and professionals, is very, very small. Everybody knows everybody, and how you conduct yourself online, how you conduct yourself in your one-on-one negotiations, how your collaborations go, the communication. You will build a network of creators that you can call on to share your work and say, can I just show you what I'm working on and tell me if this is working for you? And then there's also times you can say, yeah, I really like what you did on this story. Could you do another story in that similar style? Because some artists are versatile and they can change their style based on what the story requires. You might find somebody you're like, I'm going to Rolodex that person, save them for later, because that might work in something else that I want to do later on.
A lot of the time it's a challenge of just pulling the pin and doing it. Because how do you deal with, like, in the very beginning, the old imposter syndrome that you did something cool and you're like, well, I guess I got to do something with this, and I got to suddenly associate myself with professionals. So how do you get over that hurdle and recognize that what you're doing is actually pretty good?
It's the old adage, fake it till you make it, it's all in the presentation, and like you're saying, the professionalism, the conduct, even if it's like, yeah, okay, you're going to start out terrible with your writing or your art or whatever else, that can be improved. But the professionalism, you can start on that right away and just, putting yourself out there is the hardest thing in the world, but you can start small. That's totally fine. Show it to friends, show it to family, because they'll be nice. Mom loves it no matter what you do. Grandma's going to put it on the fridge no matter what it looks like, sort of stuff like that.
If Stephen King comes back and goes, that's garbage, you're like, oh my God, he hates it. That's amazing. It feels so that he even looked at it. Oh, that's.
That can be good too. To critique something, get good, well-rounded constructive criticism is very important to know, like, okay, what's working and what isn't working. That is very important. It hurts. Oh Lord, does it hurt? But once you get over yourself and you look at it in kind of 2 ways. And I can't remember where I heard this years and years and years ago, but it was when you're making it, you got to put it in your head, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm going to put, as much effort and passion and blood, sweat, and tears, and this is the greatest thing in the world. And same way when you present it to someone or somewhere, you gotta, even if you're faking it, you go, this is the greatest thing in the world, and you gotta look at this, you gotta read this, right? And then the other side, when you're editing it or when you're getting feedback from it, you think, yeah, no, that was pretty terrible. That's like the worst thing in the world. Why would anyone read that? And then you're getting the feedback of like, here's what you can cut. Here's what can improve. This was working, but you could do this better. And you just sort of take that and go, all right, let's go for round 2. And you just trim it down, and it's experience with that. But it is difficult to get that in your head of it can be the best and worst thing ever, but it has to be in order for it to become the best thing ever. So that's the way I look at it.
Is mentorship kind of an option on that? And I'll give you one small example that as a session drummer, there's lots of sessions that I'll go on to do recordings. And when I'm working with a good producer, The producer will say, we need you to do this. He's giving me direction. If I do something terrible, if it's not the right groove, if it's not the right fill, transitions, he's giving me direction and guiding me on it. Some of the worst sessions I've been on are the ones that I get zero guidance on. And I'm sitting and I'm like, I guess that's what it is. Cool. And the engineer's like, that's amazing. It's so good. And at the end, I'm like, oh my God, I hear it all in context. And I'm like, that wasn't good at all. It was horrible. So I would much rather have somebody guiding me, mentoring me in that session. Does that kind of resonate a bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, finding a good mentor is one of the most valuable things ever. Like if you can find, your peers is one thing, and it's great, and they can give you a lot. If you can find someone, a teacher or mentor, fantastic, even better. Like when I went to the Center for Arts and Technology, that's what my teachers were, because they were, they've been in the industry for 30, 40, 50 years. They knew it all, and they knew what worked and what didn't. And so they would give you the advice of like, you might want to, take on the world, but it's better to get your foundation first, especially when you're starting out early, like, oh yeah, animate a bouncing ball. And it's like, so easy. I'm going to do all this extra stuff. And it's like, yeah, but if you do all the extra stuff, does the ball actually still bounce? Is it still working? And all that. But, as you keep going, they're going to stick with you, especially like the director or, whoever's the department head. Is really valuable because they can get constant feedback of like what is and isn't, and their teachers are going to be harsh sometimes, but also they're going to praise the heck out of you because they want you to succeed, because then they make the school look good because, hey, look at what the student did. So that if you can find a school sometime, excellent. If not, if you can just find a friend or a peer or someone who has done that, and if you're really nice to them, be like, hey, do you mind checking this out and giving me feedback on that once you've built up some sort of relationship. Don't just go around to random professionals going, hey, look at this garbage. Like,
it's funny that resonates. We do live stream where we do sketch prompts where artists come on and they draw. And there's this one kid who's 12 years old. If we do a 10-minute or a 15-minute sketch prompt, Chad tells us what to draw. He's usually done in about 3 or 4 minutes. He's like, done. So it's gone to a point now where I'm like, okay, a little bit more than the bouncing ball. Let's see shadows. Let's see. You got another 10 minutes to draw. Give me something cool with those other 10 minutes. You're not just done in 4. So challenging him to like take advantage of the time, that kind of resonated with me on that.
Yeah. And that's what a master can do once they've learned the fundamentals and the basics. They're like, yeah, I've done this a million times. I can do it. And then you get to do the flourishes, and that's all the fun stuff. But, for a newbie starting, you got to learn the fundamentals of all. And then you can go on and add the extra, and that's going to take you longer, and it's not going to be as good, but you keep doing it, and you can have fun with it as you're getting better, for sure.
That's for art in particular, but when it comes to writing, I'm sure it's the same type of challenges.
Absolutely. And not to say that it's easier because there's more art schools than there necessarily are writing schools. I mean, there are creative writing programs you can go and do. I didn't get to go that route. I was more or less self-taught. And as he was saying about just you're reading and consuming media that just inspires you. And not all media is necessarily the right, source to go to. But if you have the ability to find someone professional, I've had a chance to work with a couple of editors on the writing side, a lot more on my fiction and my role-playing game writing, which was helpful. But even again, to your experience, some gave some feedback. Some said, change this, change that. Some said, don't do this, which invaluable to be told that.
Totally. Yeah.
And then others had, you've met your deadline. Thank you. And then that was it. It was
especially if it comes from a credible source. If they're like, this is brilliant, go with it. Then you're like, oh, okay, great. But if it's just somebody, yep, that's pretty good. Don't worry about it. Like, not the same, right?
The best story I have of that is an editor who, after I handed in a short story, had said that this is great. You really deserve to be here, which was such an odd thing to say. Like, I'm working with a bunch of other anthology writers, and we're all submitting. I'm like, that's a hell of a compliment. And then he was gone from the company like 6 months later. So yeah, it could have been mentor, but not meant to be in that case. But the compliment stayed with me. It made me believe enough that what I was showing them was my start, was my foundation, my basics, and I need to keep improving. But I wasn't just wasting my time; that I had something to give.
So on the shoulders of that, if somebody's just starting out, I'm sorry, I'm assuming you're starting out in particular, but starting out, how would one validate or find somebody who could be a good mentor for them?
Well, I think you've done that. You said you've got a professional writer or somebody who
Oh,
does
great.
writing for
Great.
that,
But
which is a great place to start.
he's already a professional now.
Exactly.
Love it.
To sidebar for that for a second is to always think of yourself as a professional. If you're writing, you're a writer.
Yeah.
You're not an amateur writer. You're not a part-time writer. You're a writer. It doesn't matter how frequently you do it. It doesn't matter whether you're published or not. That is a lesson that I've had to learn. I'm sure that the gentleman here with me would say the same, that it takes a while to teach your brain to think of yourself that way. And to go back to that question about imposter syndrome, it's still with us every single day. There's days when we are on fire and it's working and you're like, I am really good at this. And then there are days like, man, the ideas are not coming. I'm fighting it. It's not coming together. And you're not getting traction. You're not getting clicks on social media. You're not getting a lot of comments on the work that you're sharing with anybody. And you're maybe sending out queries and letters to publishers or to places, and nobody's responding back. And that's the lonely road that every creator, whether you're a writer, an artist, it doesn't matter, you have to follow. And that's why you have to call yourself a writer, call yourself an artist, call yourself a comic book creator. You're doing it. If you're writing the scripts, if you're getting the art published, getting the art rated, even if it's not published anywhere else yet, you're still doing it. And that's the first step.
Oh, I love that so much. Imposter syndrome falls in everywhere. I can't believe Microsoft gave me this $10 million account. I'm just a guy that plays video games on the weekend. Or however, you still feel like you're not that guy, right? So I love the idea of, especially if you're a creative, then you create. It doesn't matter the quality, perceived quality, I'm guessing, but you're a creator. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Any other questions? What else we got? Anybody just starting out? Let's see a question percolating. Questions. Question. Go for it.
Don't undersell yourself too. That's a really important thing. I'm an animator, and that was one of the first mistakes I did. Yeah, don't undersell yourself if you're negotiating for something. Don't just go like, oh, I'm a junior, I'm just starting out. It's, let them decide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree with that. When you're starting out, you think, well, it's not that good, it's not worth that much. But no, you put in effort to do it, and not everyone has. So it does have value for sure. I've heard so many horror stories of the the labor people have done and the peanuts they got paid for it, But I mean, a lot of this is a labor of love. We love doing it, otherwise we wouldn't do it. Most people I think could agree with that. But no, yeah, if you have a chance to negotiate, yourself, yeah, for sure, you got to value yourself and your work and your time, absolutely, because that's time you could spend doing a million and one other things. But you've chosen to be a comic creator, and I think that's one of the best things in the world to do.
How do you I love that. How do you to hearken this between $50 a page to $100 a page? What is the perceived value on what you're giving to? Yeah, there we go.
So the short answer is whatever you believe it to be.
There we go.
The short answer is whatever you can get paid for the work you're doing. Yes, there are not even industry standards. There are industry guidelines. There's industry trends. But going back to your comment about Fiverr, one of our colleagues who couldn't be here today, Leland Björk, was a writer and a letterer, an editor, and he is active on Fiverr, and he takes editing jobs on there. And we have discussions all the time about, he's like, I need to raise my rates. I need to raise my rates because good work gets more good work. He gets spread around, and he gets referred to other creators to do that. And it is something that you just have to believe in that and do a bit of research, look it up. But it's an imperfect science. You won't find a set answer, because there's people it could be professional artists who still do freelance commissions, and you'll look at their page rate and you're like, I don't like that person's art. Why would I ever pay that much for them? And plenty of people, you're like, that person's art is fantastic, and their rate seems really low. It seems really low for that. I've had that discussion with my artist who's doing my comic a couple of years back about, I'm like, are you going to raise your rates this year? Because you should, because I was seeing other artists having, broadcast that their rates were going higher. And I knew that he was as good or better than some of these other artists I was seeing. he needed to raise his rates, and I wanted to encourage him to do that.
Sorry, that reminded me heavily of like, if you were doing $10 a page, you'd be overwhelmed with work potentially, versus $600 a page. And suddenly you might get 1 gig, but you got so much time to spend on it. It's that balance. Suddenly your rates dictate how busy you're going to be as well. So maybe your rate is, dare I say, a third or a double, and now you're doing half. You can spend more time on it. Does that kind of resonate? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it also is a perception. It's all smoke and mirrors and lies. But like, if something is priced more, then it's going to have inherently more value. So you think it's going to be better. That's just kind of the truth of pricing, no matter where you go. But yeah, no, if you look at an artist rate and yeah, they do charge 600 a page, you must think like, wow, okay, that's got to be the good, high premium tier stuff. $10 a page, I'm probably going to get Stickman. I could do it myself. So it's finding the perception of what, like you said, it's what you think you're worth in the end. But it also is looking at what others are doing and finding your spot, and yeah, also how much time, you think is going to take something. Like, I've got a Patreon and it doesn't do that well, but I've got a couple dedicated people, and it's like, I'll do a drawing a month for them and they're happy with it. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, that's something I can spit out in like half an hour, and they stick around every month and they want to see that all the time. I'm like, that's fine with me. But I've seen plenty of people who are like, yeah, you got to get $20 a month, and like, I'll put your name in the credits. That's all you get. And like, thousands of people will do that because they've just got the it's all perception. It's all mind games, so it's tough.
You're hitting the exact thing that I love. It is perceived value, but you can't be penalized for your efficiency. If you can do something half as, twice as fast, then it's still worth the same amount as somebody professional, right? And yeah, so like, exactly that. Do you find that you're finding artists that are very efficient? You're getting stuff back same day. You're like, holy crap, this is amazing. This is worth every dollar because it's coming in so much fast. Is time worth more to you, or is like more time but better quality? What is that balance?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is oftentimes, if they're able to get it quickly and efficiently and like consistently, then that's a sign of their quality, and that's a sign they should be more valuable to you. Like, I recently hired a friend as a colorist to help me get out the comics quicker, because they just we did a Kickstarter in the summer and that took up all my time. So I had a friend, and we negotiated a rate, and I'm like, dude, we're gonna, we locked into, we did sign paperwork and all this, and I'm like, dude, you're so fast. Like, I got to be paying you more because you're able to get it out like same day as me. And like, yeah, sure. You like, it's again that back and forth. Like, he brings it back to me. I make some notes. He makes some changes, but like, I know him and I've worked with him, and I know he's a professional too. And it's like, yeah, I know this is your time, and you're really good at this. You know how to do it, and you've got color theory, and you've got all this art experience. And I know like the reason you're able to get it to me within the same day as me giving it to you is because you've got years and years of training. And so I shouldn't be, taking that for granted. And, it does come down to what we want to negotiate the rate, but it's like, no, it's like, you are really invaluable to me to get this,
But yeah, we'll go to you right now. My wife is exactly in that situation right now. She's working with an artist that is super efficient, and the rate in which she's paying,
don't let them
her
go. Don't let them go.
Exactly. So
Keep-
she's like,
keep on.
this is this partnership. She finally found this equilibrium, which is great. Efficiency, being able to connect perfectly. Like, she found a moment, and now she's just like, I want to make sure I'm paying this person right. I want to make what retainer do I need to happen in order to keep them on the line,
I just want to. I just want to know about these Comic Cons. How important are they for you as artists, creators, to come to this one? There's one in Kelowna, Nanaimo, probably all over. They're actually kind of new to us to attend. I just want to know, how important are they for you to expose your work?
Oh, they're
Thought you were
they're
going-
really great. They're really great for building connections because you can go around the other tables, meet all the other artists, and you'll get all these looky-loos and people who come by and take your card. Even if they don't buy anything, they've seen your face, they've seen your art, they've seen your name. That's great. That's what you got to get your name out there. And there's certain ones you go to, there might be some industry people walking around, someone really important, someone you're going to want to network with, especially down the line. And like that could be how you get your foot in the door. I've heard stories of that where they're like, oh yeah, I work for this publishing thing, and that's the dream. Of course, that's the one in the million, but it is definitely worth it, if nothing else, just to come and say hi and geek out with everyone else who loves your stuff, and get fresh faces on there, or people who have maybe seen your stuff online and then they want to get a copy, so they go, and hey, you're finally around and I'm able to get one. So it really is a lot of fun and valuable to network for sure.
Yeah, Comic Cons. It depends on how important you wanted to believe them to be important. Like if you're dead set on being something that you actually want to be, by all means, go for it. Put in time, effort, and in order to like be the best that you want to be, go around cons. Like I've been around a couple cons myself. I even talked to some of the guys who are already in the industry, and yes, it's also important to ask questions. And yes, they give you tips on how to improve your work, how to get your foot in the door, and sometimes it's not easy. But the more you do it, the more likely there's a slight chance you're going to find success in the future. That's kind of all there is to it.
They are really important these days. In the past, they were more often for professional full-time creators. It was harder for independent creators to maybe get that table space and to do that. The community was coming up primarily for the large big name companies, the big name creators, big name projects. But there was a real shift that took place as the independent comics community grew, as the creators grew. The internet and social media made that happen because communities got formed and support. And now you can walk the floor here and you can see independent artists, you can see independent, crafters and independent creators coming and showing off their comics, not through any publisher, not through any book deal, self-printed, self-made, self-sold on the floor, but you get to interact directly with the audience, and that's invaluable. But the networking opportunities, especially in some of the larger cities, can be invaluable because artists or editors and publishers do attend those conventions. And I remember going to Emerald City Con in Seattle years ago after I'd had my short story published with Woods of the Coast. I wasn't writing comics. I wasn't doing much of anything. I was in my lull, my in between space. The imposter syndrome or life or whatever you want to call it had just simply taken hold. But I had the urge when I saw that they were there. I'm like, that's an editor for Dark Horse Comics. When am I going to get an opportunity to speak to that person again? And I went and I said, listen, I don't even have a comic that I can show you right now. May I send you my short story that I had published, just in hopes that if you see something there, that maybe there's something I can do for a real long shot. I had no publishing credits, really, nothing else I could show. And that editor agreed, and I mailed them the anthology. And then months later, I got an email back directly from them, giving me feedback on the story, thanking me for taking the time, and simply encouraging me to continue and keep going. That I'll remember that experience for the rest of my life because they didn't need to do that. I was just one face of many in the crowd, but I took a chance. I didn't undersell myself, as he said, right? I believed that I had something to offer, and in doing so, something came of it.
I think I would sum it up. Wherever your people are, be there. And if you're a nerd, if you're a writer, if you love anime, if you love this is the place to be. If you love knitting, there are conventions for knitting. If you're a musician, then you go to California for NAMM. There's many different conventions you go to where you get to be around other creatives and be around other people that love what you love. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the feeling you have when you walk around here. These are your people. These are everybody who walks through the door here are inherently gonna like what you do until you give them a reason not to. Oh,
There you go. There you go.
yeah.
Yeah,
the second best time to be a geek was yesterday, and the best time to be a geek is today, because there's never been more of us. There's never been more venues and opportunities and communities and ways to connect with each other. And it's phenomenal. And as those of us with the gray in the beard, and we're a bit of old timers now, we both appreciate the moment now and sometimes lament that we didn't have that opportunity in the past to the same degree that we do now. But no looking back, just continuing to go forward and encouraging everybody that's here, every vendor that's shown up. Everybody's just here to share what they're passionate about, and I just love coming and soaking that up every single time.
You said it right. Is independent artists and writers. There's no better time than now, and that goes for every convention. If you have a winery and there's a wine convention, there's just a guy in his basement making wine that's got a booth, right? There's no better time for independent creators, I say once again, to be spotlit. And I'm certainly a big proponent, and I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm a big proponent of, when I walk around, I want to support independent writers. This is literally your first comic book you've ever written. I'm not even going to open it. 100% I'm buying that. How do I make that work, right? Yeah. Is this your first convention or second? What was your first one you went to? Well, the Kelowna one? It's a great one, right? Yeah. So perfect. And that's a great example. They've got the big booth area as well. But a lot of the time, especially with these type of conventions, it's the one-on-one time that you get with artists or with writers or with just actors and that type of thing. The panel rooms are awesome as well. So anytime you can get like these intimate moments with people, yeah, hopefully it gets like-minded people around just talking, right? Yeah. What time is it, boys? It's 25 after. Shall we wind her down?
Kim, can we tell everybody where to find us?
You beat me to it. I was going to give you guys all opportunity. Is there any other questions, by the way? Oh, hit it.
Not to put the cart before the horse, but when I get to the time when I can kind of publish it out there, would you recommend doing something online? For me personally, I don't care if I have, it'd be awesome if you sell, 1 million copies, get a movie, right, whatever. But for me, it's just, I've always wanted to do it and just get it out there. Where would be the best place to put it out?
I'm going to give it to Matt because he's made that transition from the digital world to the physical.
Yeah, no, that there's lots of places online now. Like we were talking social media, I see tons of people just on Instagram and Twitter, and that's just where they'll post their comics, and they just build up that repertoire there. And usually those are the one-off gag comics, and that's totally fine. Some longer form there too. They can do the threads, depending on the format. I know Amazon, they bought out Comixology. That was a website back in the day. I'm not sure. I'm not on there anymore. I don't know how they're going through that, but that was how I started. A couple, one shots on there. There's if you do the strip format, there's Webtoons and Tapas, which are like the long scrolling one that you scroll through on your phone and it's long unbroken. Those are very popular right now. That's where I've got my most popular stuff with Poppy, and it there's lots of readers on there. But also, yeah, just like any art platform can also work too. Like I said, Instagram and Twitter, they got, if you get in those like artist spaces and you're like, oh, here's what I've got, and that's your art piece, is your comic, it's totally fair to put it on there. You can start your own website if you want. That's kind of the old school kind, not so much anymore, but I see some people do that and then they get by. It really depends, but yeah, there's lots of avenues out there. If as long as you can like stick your name on it and get it out there and get eyes on it, then yeah, for sure.
But doing this is exactly the first step. Asking the questions, going down the booths, spending a little bit more time with these guys, compose more questions, and just keep asking them, I guess, right? That's awesome. Tell us what you're working on right now, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so my current project right now is the webtoon called Poppy, the Girl Who Slept in 100 Years. You can find it at webtoons.com, tapas.io, and sometimes on my Instagram at MatthewSen95. You can also go to MatthewSen.com to see all my other art, animation, comics. There'll be links to everything there, including my online store. We recently put out volume 1 of Poppy, which is the first 75 comics because it's done in the comic strip style. Lots of goodies and extras in there. You can order it, or you can go visit our table, table F10, and come say hi and buy a book.
If you guys are gonna, okay, if you guys want to see more content of Ill Will, you'll be able to find that also on Webtoon, and also on print. The next time you see me at a Comic-Con, I'm going to be able to publish this book both digitally and physically. So if you like a physical copy, you can always come around the next Comic-Con to pick it up, or this Comic-Con. And another update, my third book is currently in the works.
Congrats. Awesome.
I'm Jason Collins. You can find me online as JL Collins. Social media, I'm on this site formerly known as Twitter at digital_Collins. I'm on Blue Sky at Digital Collins. You can go to Linktree at digital_Collins. You'll find my bibliography there of all the published work I've done for comics, role-playing games, fiction, and you'll find the link to my upcoming Kickstarter next year for Thistle Issue 1, my fantasy comic.
Amazing. And your name is? Chad? Chad's an up-and-comer. He's going to be right up there with you in no time. Cool? Awesome. Thank you. I'm PJ from the Retrologist, and we've got more stuff happening throughout the day, but come hang out. Cool?